The sun blazed down on the bustling streets of Maplewood, casting a relentless heat that seemed to amplify the chaos of the city. Clara, a woman whose life had been reduced to navigating these very streets, felt the warmth seep into her tattered clothes, a constant reminder of her circumstances. Her once vibrant dress, now faded and frayed, clung to her form, but it did little to shield her from the harshness of the world around her. With each step, she felt the stares of passers-by, eyes that flickered with a mix of curiosity and disdain before quickly averting their gaze, as if her existence was too uncomfortable to acknowledge. Clara had grown accustomed to this indifference. It was a cloak she wore as heavily as the summer sun. She moved through the throngs of people, her heart heavy with the weight of rejection and loneliness. In her mind, she replayed the words of a kind stranger from years ago. "You are not invisible. You have a story." Yet, in this moment, surrounded by the noise of laughter and conversation, she felt utterly unseen. As she approached a nearby cafe, the tantalizing aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, mingling with the scent of pastries that beckoned from behind the glass display. Clara's stomach growled in response, a reminder of the days when she could afford such luxuries. She hesitated at the entrance, her mind swirling with memories of warmth and comfort. Just then, a couple emerged from the cafe, their laughter echoing in the air. Clara instinctively stepped aside, allowing them to pass, but she caught their fleeting glance, one of discomfort, as if her presence interrupted a perfect moment. With a heavy sigh, she turned away from the cafe, feeling the familiar sting of rejection. "It's just a cafe," she whispered to herself, attempting to dismiss the feeling that clung to her like a shadow. She began to walk again, her feet taking her toward the park, a place where she often found solace among the trees and the laughter of children. Perhaps today would be different, she thought. Perhaps she would find a moment of peace. Entering the park, she was greeted by the sight of children playing, their laughter ringing like music in the air. Families gathered on blankets, picnicking under the shade of sprawling oaks. Clara paused, her heart aching at the sight of such joy. She watched a group of children chase one another, their giggles mingling with the rustle of leaves. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to join them, to feel the warmth of belonging. But that thought quickly dissipated, replaced by the harsh reality of her solitude. With a resigned sigh, Clara turned to find a bench where she could sit and observe. As she settled herself, she noticed a small figure in the distance, a boy, no older than 8, sitting alone on a bench, his small shoulders shaking as he wept quietly. Clara's heart tightened at the sight. The instinct to comfort surged within her, overpowering her own feelings of invisibility. She stood up, brushing off the dirt from her dress, and began to make her way toward him. "Hey there, little one," Clara said softly, kneeling beside the bench. The boy looked up, his tear-streaked face revealing a mixture of surprise and vulnerability. "What's got you so sad?" she asked gently, her voice soothing like a balm. The boy sniffled, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. I lost my toy," he admitted between sobs. "It was my favorite. I can't find it anywhere." His voice trembled, and Clara could see the anguish in his bright blue eyes, a mirror of the pain she felt in her own heart. "I'm so sorry to hear that," Clara replied, her heart aching for him. "What kind of toy was it?" "It was a little stuffed bear," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "His name is Mr. Hugs. He's been with me forever." Clara's heart sank at the thought of a child losing something so dear. "You know," she said, "sometimes when we lose something important, It can feel really big and scary. But I believe there's a chance we can find it together. Would you like that? The boy lifted his gaze, his eyes brightening for a moment. You would help me? He asked, hope flickering like a candle in the wind. Of course, Clara replied, smiling warmly. Let's see if we can find Mr. Huggs together. As they stood, Clara felt a surge of purpose rush through her. The boy's sadness became her own mission, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of belonging, purpose, and connection. What's your name, sweetheart? She asked, as they began to search the nearby area. Ethan, he answered, his voice steadier now. What's yours? I'm Clara, she replied, feeling the warmth of their conversation wrap around them like a comforting embrace. Now, tell me more about Mr. Huggs. What does he look like? Ethan frowned in concentration. He's brown and really soft. He has a little red bow tie and a tiny patch on his ear. Clara nodded, encouraging him to continue. And what kind of adventures have you had together? Ethan's face lit up as he began to recount tales of imaginary quests and bedtime stories where Mr. Huggs saved the day. One time, we fought off a dragon, he exclaimed, his eyes wide with excitement. And then we had a tea party with all my other stuffed animals. Clara smiled, her heart swelling at the boy's enthusiasm. That sounds amazing. You must be a great adventurer, Ethan. Just then, Clara caught a glimpse of a man standing beneath a tree at the edge of the park, watching them intently. The man's sharp suit contrasted starkly with Clara's worn appearance, and she felt a flicker of self-consciousness. But the moment quickly passed as she focused on Ethan. Let's check over by those bushes, she suggested, pointing toward a cluster of greenery nearby. Maybe Mr. Huggs is hiding there. As they moved towards the bushes, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She glanced back at the man, who remained there, his expression unreadable. For a moment, their eyes met, and she felt a strange connection, as if he understood the depths of her struggle. But then he looked away, and she turned back to Ethan, pushing aside the unsettling thought. Okay, Ethan, she said, kneeling down by the bushes. Let's see if we can find your friend. On the count of 3, we'll peek together. 1, 2, 3. They both leaned forward, peering into the foliage, but there was no sign of Mr. Huggs. Ethan's face fell, and Clara's heart broke a little more. Don't worry, she said, trying to mask her own disappointment. We'll keep looking. Sometimes, the best adventures lead us to unexpected places. As they continued their search, Clara felt a sense of calm wash over her. In that moment, she was not just a homeless woman. She was a friend, a companion, and a source of hope for a boy who needed her. The world around them faded, and all that mattered was the bond they were forging in their quest for a lost toy. Clara knelt down beside Ethan, her heart racing at the sight of his tear-streaked face. She could see the pain in his eyes, a deep well of sorrow that reminded her of her own struggles. The park around them buzzed with children laughing, couples chatting, and the distant bark of dogs playing. Yet here, in this small cocoon of shared grief, the world faded away. What's wrong, sweetheart? Clara asked softly, her voice gentle, as she brushed a strand of hair away from Ethan's forehead. Ethan sniffled, his small shoulders shaking as he struggled to find his words. I lost my toy, he finally managed to say, his voice barely a whisper. It was my favorite. It's a little blue dinosaur, and I can't find it anywhere. Clara's heart ached for him. She could remember how much her own toys had meant to her as a child, companions in a world that often felt cold and unwelcoming. A blue dinosaur? That sounds really special, she said, her eyes sparkling with empathy. Do you want to tell me what it looks like? Maybe we can find it together. Ethan looked up at her with a flicker of hope in his watery blue eyes. It's small and has big eyes, and it makes a roaring sound when you press its belly. Wow, that sounds amazing, Clara exclaimed, her enthusiasm genuine. I bet it's somewhere close by. Let's look for it together. Can you show me where you last saw it? Ethan nodded eagerly, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. I think I dropped it near the swing set. Lead the way, Clara said, rising to her feet and brushing the dirt off her knees. As they walked, she noted the way Ethan's posture shifted from sadness to a tentative hope. She felt a warmth spreading in her chest. Perhaps she could bring a little joy back into his day. They made their way to the swing set, where the sound of laughter filled the air, and the sun danced through the leaves above. Clara scanned the ground, her eyes searching for any sign of the lost toy. Tell me more about your dinosaur, she prompted, hoping to keep Ethan's spirits up as they searched. It's called Dino, Ethan said, his voice growing stronger as he spoke about his cherished toy. I take him everywhere. My dad got him for my birthday last year. We play adventures together. Adventures? That sounds fun. What kind of adventures do you go on? Clara asked, genuinely intrigued. Ethan's face brightened, and he began to recount tales of Dino battling imaginary dragons and exploring magical lands. Once, we found a treasure in the backyard. It was just some old coins, but we pretended it was pirate gold. He laughed, and Clara couldn't help but smile at the innocent joy radiating from him. As they reached the swing set, Clara crouched down, examining the ground closely. Let's see. We need to be detectives, she said, putting on a serious face. What clues do we have? Ethan giggled, his previous sadness momentarily forgotten. Clue number 1. Dino is blue. Excellent clue, Clara replied, pretending to jot it down in an imaginary notebook. Clue number 2. Clue number 2. He likes to hide in tall grass. Perfect. Let's check the grass over there. Clara pointed toward a patch of green nearby, and they both hurried over, scanning the area as if they were on a grand expedition. Meanwhile, hidden behind a large oak tree, Richard stood, watching the two. He had been pacing the park, keeping an eye on Ethan, who had been unusually quiet that day. The sight of Clara kneeling beside his son, her warmth flowing into the space between them, struck a chord deep within him. Richard felt an unexpected mixture of emotions swell inside him. Curiosity about this woman, concern for his son, and an undeniable admiration for the kindness she was showing. Why is she helping him? He muttered to himself, battling an instinct to intervene. The world seemed to slip away as he observed Clara's gentle demeanor and Ethan's brightening spirit. It was a stark contrast to the cold, fast-paced life he led, filled with meetings and deadlines. He had been so focused on success and wealth that he had forgotten how simple acts could create profound connections. Clara continued to search diligently, all the while engaging Ethan with tales of her own childhood. You know, when I was your age, I once lost my favorite teddy bear, she recounted, her voice soothing. I was so sad, just like you. I searched everywhere for it, and when I finally found it, I hugged it so tight, as if it had come back from an adventure of its own. Did you have fun adventures with your teddy? Ethan asked, his eyes wide with intrigue. Oh, absolutely. We went on so many adventures. Teddy and I climbed mountains in my backyard, fought off fierce dragons, and even made friends with the squirrels. Clara laughed lightly, her spirit brightening. What do you think Dino would say if he could talk? Ethan giggled again, imagining his toy coming to life. He would say, let's find treasures. Then let's keep looking. Clara encouraged, and together they continued their search, the bond between them growing stronger with every shared smile and story. As Richard watched from his hiding spot, he felt a stirring within him. This woman, who seemed to have nothing, was teaching his son the true value of kindness. It was a lesson he had been too busy to impart himself. He had always thought that providing material comforts was enough, but here was Clara, giving Ethan something far more significant: understanding, compassion, and the assurance that he was not alone. Richard stepped back, contemplating whether to reveal himself. Just then, Clara's voice broke through his thoughts. "Look, Ethan, what about over there by that bench?" Ethan's eyes followed her pointing finger, and he dashed over, hope blooming anew. Richard's heart swelled with admiration for Clara's unwavering spirit. She was transforming a moment of despair into one of hope, and he couldn't help but feel he had stumbled upon something extraordinary. As Clara and Ethan continued their search, Richard took a deep breath, feeling an unexpected sense of purpose. Maybe he had been too focused on his own world, too consumed by the pursuit of success. Perhaps it was time to step out from the shadows and embrace the warmth of connection that was unfolding right before him. With that thought, he took a step forward, the decision made. He would approach them, not as a wealthy businessman, but as a father who had witnessed a moment of true compassion, one that could change everything. As Clara and Ethan wandered through the park, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the grassy expanse. Clara, her heart swelling with a sense of purpose, felt a warmth that had eluded her for so long. The park, bustling with families, laughter, and the occasional bark of a dog, became a backdrop for their budding friendship. "Do you have a favorite toy?" Clara asked, her voice gentle as she brushed a stray hair behind her ear. She knelt beside Ethan, who was scanning the ground with intense focus, his little brow furrowed in concentration. Ethan looked up, his eyes glistening with remnants of tears. "I had this dinosaur," he replied, his voice small but filled with a kind of fierce pride. "His name was Spike. He was my best friend." "Spike. I like that name." Clara smiled, her heart aching for the boy's loss. "What kind of dinosaur was he?" "He was a T-Rex," Ethan exclaimed, his face lighting up as he animatedly gestured with his hands. "He was green and had a big, toothy grin. I took him everywhere with me, even to school." Clara's mind flashed back to her own childhood, a time when joy and innocence were abundant. "I had a toy like that too," she said, her voice softening. "A teddy bear named Mr. Cuddles. He was a little worn out, but he always listened when I talked to him." "What did you talk about?" Ethan asked, curiosity piqued. "Everything," Clara replied with a chuckle. "I told him my secrets, my dreams, and sometimes I just told him about my day. He was a great listener." Ethan nodded, contemplating Clara's words as they continued their search. "I wish I could find Spike. He was more than just a toy. He was my friend." The sincerity in his voice tugged at Clara's heart. "He sounds very special. Friends like that are hard to come by." She hesitated for a moment, then added, "You know, even if you don't find Spike today, you can always make new friends. They might not be the same, but they can still bring you joy." "I guess so," Ethan murmured, a hint of doubt creeping into his voice. "But it won't be the same." Clara nodded, understanding his pain. "You're right, Ethan. It's okay to miss him. But sometimes, the memories we have of our friends can help us make new ones. Do you think Mr. Cuddles would want me to be happy?" Ethan asked, gazing up at her, his innocent eyes filled with a blend of hope and sorrow. Clara smiled, her heart swelling with affection for this little boy. "I think he would want you to remember all the adventures you had together and to keep that joy in your heart. That way, you can share it with others." As they walked, the connection between them deepened. They shared stories of their lives, each anecdote weaving a thread of camaraderie in the fabric of their relationship. Clara found herself laughing more than she had in years, her spirit buoyed by Ethan's infectious enthusiasm. Meanwhile, Richard, hidden behind a large oak tree, continued to observe the tender interaction unfolding before him. He felt an unsettling mix of emotions as he watched Clara's genuine care for his son. The warmth radiating from Clara seemed to envelop Ethan, illuminating the boy's previously somber demeanor. Richard shifted slightly, a mix of admiration and confusion swirling within him. He had always been the protector of his son, shielding him from the harshness of the world. But now, watching Clara kneel beside Ethan, he felt a pull, a realization that sometimes strength could be found in vulnerability. What was it about this woman that captivated him so? He had seen plenty of people in his life, many of whom were wealthy and successful, but few had exuded the kind of raw compassion that Clara displayed. As he contemplated whether to step forward, Richard noticed Ethan smile for the first time as Clara spoke. It was a smile that transformed his son's face, making him look years younger and entirely carefree. The sight tugged at Richard's heartstrings, igniting a flicker of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, this encounter was meaningful. Maybe I should introduce myself, he murmured to himself, taking a cautious step closer. But as he moved, he was captivated by the sight of Clara reaching down to Ethan once more. "Let's look over by the swings," Clara suggested, pointing toward the playground area. "Sometimes toys get left behind where kids play." "Okay," Ethan replied eagerly, his earlier sorrow dissipating like morning fog. Richard hesitated, his instincts urging him to protect Ethan, but also encouraging him to witness this moment. He stepped from behind the tree, the rustling of leaves catching Clara's attention. "Ethan," Richard called, his voice carrying an edge of authority. "What are you doing over there?" Ethan turned, a mix of excitement and guilt crossing his face. "I was just looking for my toy, Dad." Clara stood up, brushing off her knees as she turned to face Richard, her heart racing. He was taller than she expected, dressed in a crisp business suit that seemed out of place in the park. "Hello," she said, her voice steady despite the sudden shift in dynamics. "I'm Clara. I was helping Ethan look for his toy." Richard studied her for a moment, his expression a complex mix of uncertainty and gratitude. "Thank you for being kind to my son," he said, his voice softer than she anticipated. "He's been a little down lately." Clara felt a rush of warmth at his words. "It's no trouble at all. He's a wonderful boy." Ethan beamed at the compliment, feeling a surge of pride. "Clara helped me remember my dinosaur, Spike." Richard's brow furrowed slightly. "Spike, it's his favorite toy," Clara explained quickly. "We were just sharing stories." Richard's heart softened as he watched the two connect. He had always worried about Ethan's emotional well-being, particularly after his mother's passing. Now, seeing his son opening up to a stranger brought an unexpected sense of relief. "I appreciate your kindness," Richard said, his tone sincere. "It's hard to find genuine connections these days, especially for kids." Clara nodded, her eyes meeting his. "It really is. Sometimes, all it takes is a little compassion." Richard's gaze lingered on Clara, sensing an unspoken depth in her words. "You're right. It's easy to get lost in our own lives and forget the importance of simple gestures." Ethan, sensing the growing connection between the two adults, chimed in. "Can we keep looking for Spike together?" Richard exchanged a glance with Clara, a silent agreement passing between them. "Of course," Richard said, his voice warm. "Let's find that dinosaur." As they resumed their search, Clara felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. In that moment, it wasn't just about finding a lost toy. It was about forging a bond that could transcend their circumstances. With each step, Clara, Ethan, and Richard began to weave a narrative of compassion and connection, one that would change the course of their lives in ways they could barely imagine. And as they searched the grass, laughter and stories filled the air, creating a tapestry of shared humanity that would linger long after the sun dipped below the horizon. As Clara knelt beside Ethan, the park around them continued to bustle with life. Children laughed and played, couples strolled hand in hand, and joggers passed by, their rhythmic footsteps fading into the background. But in that moment, the world had narrowed to just the two of them. The boy looked up at her with wide, tear-streaked eyes, and Clara felt an overwhelming urge to protect him, to shield him from whatever sorrow had cast a shadow over his small heart. "Thank you for helping me," Ethan said, his voice a mere whisper. "No one usually cares." Clara smiled gently, brushing a few stray strands of hair behind her ear. "It's my pleasure, sweetie. Sometimes we just need someone to listen." She recalled her own childhood, the days when her world had been brighter, filled with laughter and love. "What kind of toy did you lose?" she asked, hoping to shift his thoughts toward happier memories. "It was a little spaceship," Ethan replied, his eyes lighting up with recollection. "It made cool sounds. I took it everywhere. I thought I lost it in the playground." "Well, let's see if we can find it together. Maybe it's just hiding somewhere in the grass." Clara's heart swelled with a sense of purpose, the kind that had been absent from her life for far too long. Together, they began to search, their small hands combing through the blades of grass, lifting leaves, and peering beneath benches. As they scoured the park, Richard stepped closer, drawn in by the sight of his son and the homeless woman. He watched as Clara moved with a gentle grace, her expressions filled with empathy and understanding. The sight was both beautiful and humbling. Richard felt an unfamiliar warmth spreading through him, an appreciation for the kindness that seemed to flow so effortlessly from Clara. "Maybe we can retrace your steps," Clara suggested, looking back at the boy. "Where were you playing when you last saw your spaceship?" "Over there, near the big tree." Ethan pointed excitedly, his previous sorrow momentarily forgotten as he led them toward the towering oak. Richard followed at a distance, contemplating the stark contrast between his life and Clara's. As a successful businessman, he had always associated happiness with wealth and status. Yet here was Clara, with her ragged clothes and unkempt hair, radiating a warmth that was far richer than any bank account could ever hold. He felt a tugging at his heart, an awakening of sorts. What had he been missing all these years? "Look!" Ethan exclaimed as he crouched down, digging his fingers into the grass. "I think I see something." Clara rushed to his side, her heart racing with anticipation. She knelt beside him, peering into the ground where he had pointed. "What is it?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement. "It's just a stick," Ethan sighed, disappointment creeping back into his voice. Clara placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "That's okay, Ethan. Sometimes sticks can be more than they seem. They can be magic wands or even spaceships in disguise." She smiled, hoping to reignite the spark of imagination in him. "Let's keep looking. We'll find it together." Just then, Richard could no longer hold back. He stepped from behind the tree, his heart pounding as he approached them. "Excuse me," he said, his voice tinged with a mix of hesitation and sincerity. "I'm Richard, Ethan's father." Clara looked up, surprised. "Oh, hello," she replied, her cheeks flushing slightly. She felt a wave of pride for her small role in bringing a smile to Ethan's face, but embarrassment also crept in as she realized her appearance was far from presentable. "Thank you for helping my son," Richard continued, his eyes reflecting genuine gratitude. "I saw you two from a distance, and it's clear you've made him feel better." His gaze shifted to Ethan, who was now beaming, the earlier sadness replaced by a glimmer of joy. "It's nothing, really," Clara said, her voice softening. "He just needed someone to talk to." Richard studied her for a moment, intrigued by the strength she exuded despite her circumstances. "No, it's more than nothing," he insisted. "It takes a special person to notice when someone is hurting and to take the time to help." He felt an unexpected sense of connection to Clara, a shared understanding that transcended their vastly different lives. Ethan chimed in. "She's the best. She said she helped me find my spaceship." Clara smiled down at Ethan, her heart swelling with affection. "We're still on the hunt," she replied, glancing at Richard. "But we could take our time. There's no rush." Richard chuckled softly, his demeanor shifting as he relaxed. "Well, if you need any help, I'd be happy to join the search. I might not be as good at finding toys, but I can at least keep an eye out for anything else that might catch our attention." Clara met his gaze, surprised by his willingness to engage. "That would be great," she said, appreciating the offer. The more eyes, the better. As they began moving together through the park, Richard felt compelled to learn more about this remarkable woman. "So, Clara," he began, his tone curious yet respectful, "what brings you to Maplewood? It's a lovely city, but it can be tough for those without a place to call home." Clara hesitated, weighing her words carefully. She sensed that Richard was genuinely interested, not merely making small talk. "Life has its way of throwing challenges at us," she finally said, her voice steady. "I lost my job a while back and found myself on the streets. It's been a struggle, but I try to keep my spirits up." Richard nodded, his heart aching for her. "I can't imagine how difficult that must be," he said softly. "But you seem to have such a kind heart. It's inspiring." "Thank you," Clara replied, a hint of vulnerability creeping into her voice. "I've learned that kindness can be a light in dark times. Even when it feels like the world has forgotten you, a small act of compassion can make a difference." Richard's perspective began to shift as he absorbed her words. He had spent years chasing success and wealth, often overlooking the importance of compassion and connection. He realized he had been living in a bubble, insulated from the struggles of those around him. Clara's spirit challenged everything he thought he knew. "What about you, Richard?" Clara asked, her curiosity piqued. "What do you do?" "I run a tech company," he replied, feeling a bit hesitant to share. "It's been a rewarding journey, but I often find myself caught up in numbers and profits, forgetting the people behind them." Clara smiled knowingly. "It's easy to get lost in that world. I've seen it before. But it's the people we help and the connections we make that truly matter." The conversation flowed easily, as if they had known each other for years. Clara spoke about her dreams and the little things that brought her joy, while Richard opened up about his fears and the pressures of his job. The park faded in the background as they shared stories and laughter, both feeling an unexpected bond forming. Ethan, still full of energy, darted ahead, calling out, "Look, there's a playground. Maybe I lost my spaceship there." Richard and Clara exchanged glances, their connection deepening. "Shall we?" Richard asked, gesturing toward the playground. As they walked together, Clara felt a warmth in her heart, a sense of hope she hadn't experienced in a long time. Richard's presence was reassuring, and the conversation had sparked something within her, a reminder that she was still deserving of kindness and connection. "Thank you for talking with me," Clara said, her voice sincere. "It's not often that someone takes the time to listen." Richard smiled, a new understanding dawning within him. "And thank you for reminding me of what truly matters." The words hung in the air, a silent agreement that their lives were forever changed by this encounter. Their laughter mingled with the sounds of the park as they approached the playground, where the sun bathed everything in a golden glow. Richard felt a sense of purpose blooming within him, a desire to explore the world beyond his corporate walls and contribute something meaningful to it. Clara's strength and resilience were a beacon, guiding him toward a more compassionate path. In that moment, as they stepped into the playground, the boundaries of their worlds began to blur, and a new chapter was poised to unfold, one that would challenge their perceptions and redefine their understanding of compassion and success. Richard stood before Clara, the weight of his offer hanging in the air between them. The late afternoon sun filtered through the leaves of the nearby trees, casting dappled shadows on the park bench where they stood. Clara's expression shifted from surprise to apprehension as she processed his words. "A job," she repeated softly, her voice barely above a whisper, the concept seeming almost surreal. "You mean like working at your company?" Richard nodded, his demeanor earnest. "Yes, I believe your perspective, your experiences, could bring something unique to our team. We could use a fresh approach, especially in our community outreach initiatives. You have a real understanding of the challenges people face." Clara's heart raced. The thought of having a stable job felt like a distant dream, one she had long since abandoned. "But I don't have any experience in a corporate setting, Mr. Thompson. I don't even know where to begin." "You don't need to have all the answers," Richard replied, his tone encouraging. "You've shown compassion and resilience, qualities that are often overlooked in the business world. I can teach you the rest, and we have a supportive team that will help you along the way. Think of this as a chance to change your life." Clara looked down at her hands, calloused and worn from the struggles of her daily existence. The idea of stepping into a world so far removed from her current reality filled her with both hope and fear. "What if I fail?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Failure is part of growth," Richard said firmly. "You won't be alone in this. I'll be there to guide you, and your colleagues will be supportive. Just give it a chance." After a long pause, Clara finally met his gaze, her heart thudding in her chest. "Okay," she said slowly, "I'll give it a try." Richard smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across his features. "Let's get started then. We can discuss the details tomorrow. I'll have HR prepare everything." "Welcome aboard, Clara." As Clara walked away from the park that day, her mind buzzed with a whirlwind of emotions. She felt a spark of hope igniting within her, but it was accompanied by a nagging sense of doubt. Could she really do this? Was she worthy of such an opportunity? Days turned into weeks, and Clara found herself sitting at a small desk in a modest office space within Richard's company. The bustling environment was a stark contrast to the quiet solitude she had grown accustomed to. The walls were adorned with motivational posters, and the air was filled with the hum of conversations and the click-clack of keyboards. Her initial days were filled with training sessions, where she learned the ropes of corporate life. Clara struggled at first, her hands shaking as she typed up reports and took notes during meetings. However, her colleagues, an eclectic mix of individuals, quickly rallied around her. They offered to review her work, shared tips, and even invited her to lunch. "Don't worry, Clara," said Julia, a cheerful woman in her 30s, as they sat in the break room one afternoon. "We've all been there. Just take your time, and don't hesitate to ask questions. You're doing great." Clara couldn't help but smile at Julia's enthusiasm. It was refreshing to be surrounded by people who genuinely cared about her success. Each day brought new challenges, and with each small victory, her confidence began to grow. Yet, not everyone welcomed her presence with open arms. Tom, Richard's business partner, eyed Clara with skepticism from the moment she stepped into the office. His demeanor was cool and dismissive, and Clara could feel the chill radiating from him whenever their paths crossed. "What's she doing here?" Tom muttered to Richard one afternoon, his tone dripping with disdain as Clara walked past them. "She's a charity case, not a professional. This is a business, not a welfare program." Richard's expression hardened. "She's here because I believe in her potential, Tom. You should give her a chance." "A chance? She'll just drag us down." Tom scoffed, crossing his arms. "You're making a mistake." "I'm willing to take that risk," Richard replied, his voice steady. "Clara has a unique perspective that could benefit our outreach initiatives. You need to open your mind." Tom's jaw tightened as he glared at Clara from a distance, his resentment brewing beneath the surface. He couldn't shake the feeling that her presence threatened his position. The more Richard championed Clara, the more Tom felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. As the weeks rolled on, Clara's determination to prove herself only intensified. She immersed herself in her work, pouring her heart into every project, driven by the desire to make a difference. She began brainstorming ideas for community outreach programs, drawing from her own experiences on the streets. The more she contributed, the more she felt a sense of belonging. One afternoon, while reviewing a proposal, Clara noticed Richard leaning against the doorframe, watching her with an approving smile. "You're really coming into your own, Clara. The ideas you've pitched are inspiring." "Thank you," Clara replied, her cheeks flushing with pride. "I just want to make a difference, you know? I've seen so much need in the community, and I want to help." "I believe you will," Richard said, his eyes sparkling with encouragement. "We're planning a meeting next week to discuss your proposals. I want you to present your ideas to the team." Clara's heart raced at the thought. Present? In front of everyone? "Absolutely. You've done the work, and you deserve to share it," Richard assured her, his confidence in her palpable. As she prepared for the presentation, Clara poured hours into refining her ideas, rehearsing in front of the mirror, and seeking feedback from her supportive colleagues. The day of the meeting arrived, and Clara felt a mix of excitement and anxiety bubbling within her. When her turn came, Clara stepped up to the front of the conference room, her palms sweaty but her determination unwavering. She took a deep breath and began to speak, sharing her vision for community outreach programs that focused on providing job training and support for the homeless. The room was silent as she spoke, the gravity of her words resonating with her colleagues. Clara could see the shift in their expressions, curiosity, admiration, and understanding. As she wrapped up her presentation, a round of applause erupted, and even Tom, despite his initial skepticism, appeared momentarily caught off guard. "Great job, Clara," Richard said, beaming at her after the meeting. "I knew you had it in you." As the days passed, Clara began to feel more at home in her new role. Her ideas were well received, and she found herself collaborating with her colleagues on various projects. However, Tom's resentment only intensified. He watched as Clara gained recognition for her contributions, and with each passing day, his jealousy festered. In the shadows, he started plotting to undermine her. Small, insidious actions, misplacing her reports, spreading rumors about her qualifications, became his weapons. Clara remained unaware of his machinations, focused instead on her work and the positive relationships she was building. But in the back of her mind, she sensed an undercurrent of tension, a feeling that someone was watching her, waiting for her to stumble. Yet, she pushed those thoughts aside, determined to stay focused on her mission to make a difference. As Clara thrived in her new role, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. Just months ago, she had been wandering the streets, invisible to the world. Now, she was part of a team, contributing to something greater than herself. She had learned that kindness could open doors, that compassion had the power to transform lives. Yet, as shadows loomed in the corners of her new reality. Clara knew she had to remain vigilant. The journey ahead would not be without its challenges, but she was ready to face them head-on. Clara stood in the bright, sterile conference room, her heart racing as she faced the board of directors. The polished oak table gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and the air was thick with tension. Tom, with his slicked-back hair and tailored suit, leaned against the wall, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. He had spent the last few weeks scheming, looking for any opportunity to undermine her. Today, he had finally decided to confront her. "Let's talk about your recent project, Clara," he began, his tone dripping with condescension. "It seems to me that you've been spending more time outside the office than actually contributing to the team. Care to explain?" Clara felt a wave of indignation wash over her, but she took a deep breath. She had worked hard to earn her place at the company, and she refused to let Tom's petty jealousy get the best of her. "I've been meeting with community leaders to create a partnership that could benefit our outreach programs," she replied, her voice steady. "Understanding the needs of the homeless community is vital for our corporate social responsibility initiatives." Tom scoffed. "Corporate social responsibility? Is that what you call your little excursions into the park? You're not running a charity here, Clara. You're here to make a profit." The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, and Clara could feel their eyes on her, assessing. She decided it was time to share her truth. "You're right, Tom. This company needs to make a profit, but we also have a responsibility to give back. I know firsthand what it's like to be invisible to society, and I refuse to let that experience go to waste. Compassion isn't just a nice idea. It's a fundamental aspect of doing business in today's world." A murmur of agreement echoed around the room, and Richard, who had been watching from his seat at the head of the table, leaned forward, his expression fierce. "Clara is absolutely correct. We need to be more than just a company that focuses solely on the bottom line. We have an opportunity to make a real difference, and Clara's perspective is invaluable." Tom's smirk faltered for a moment as Richard's words hung in the air. "Richard, with all due respect, allowing sentiment to guide our decisions could lead to financial ruin. We cannot afford to divert our resources into projects that don't have tangible returns. Or we could miss the chance to connect with our community and build a loyal customer base." Richard shot back, his voice rising. "I won't let your short-sightedness jeopardize our integrity, Tom. If we lose sight of our values, we lose everything." The tension in the room escalated as Tom's expression hardened. "This isn't over, Richard. You're making a mistake by putting your trust in her," he spat, his voice low and menacing. "You think she's some kind of hero? She's just a homeless woman who got lucky." Clara stood tall, emboldened by Richard's defense. "I may have come from difficult circumstances, Tom, but that doesn't define my worth. I've worked hard to be here, and I'm committed to using my position to advocate for those who don't have a voice. That's something you'll never understand." The board members exchanged glances, clearly taken aback by Clara's courage. Tom, realizing he was losing ground, tried to regain control. "You think your little stories will save you? People like you don't belong in a corporate setting." Richard's eyes narrowed. "That's enough, Tom. This isn't about Clara's past. It's about her potential. We need more people like her who can bring empathy and understanding to our work. It's time for you to go." With those words, the room fell silent, the weight of Richard's declaration sinking in. Clara felt a rush of relief wash over her. Tom's plan to discredit her had backfired spectacularly. The board members nodded in agreement, and Richard continued, "I'm calling for an immediate review of Tom's conduct. If he cannot respect the values we stand for, he has no place in this company." Tom's face blanched as he realized the gravity of the situation. "You can't do this," he shouted, but Richard was already standing, signaling for security to escort Tom out. The board members murmured their approval as Tom glared at Clara, his eyes filled with venom. "This isn't over," he hissed before storming out. As the door slammed behind him, Clara felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had faced down a man who had tried to undermine her, and she had emerged victorious. The board members turned to her, their expressions a mix of admiration and respect. "Thank you for your bravery, Clara," one of them said. "You've shown us what true leadership looks like." Richard approached Clara, pride shining in his eyes. "You handled that remarkably well. I knew you had it in you." Clara could hardly believe what had just transpired. The relief flooded over her, and she let out a shaky breath. "I couldn't have done it without your support, Richard. Thank you for standing up for me." Richard smiled warmly. "You earned it. You're more than just an employee. You're a crucial part of this team. And I believe in what you're doing for the community. We'll make sure that our outreach programs become a central part of our mission moving forward." Clara's heart swelled with gratitude. "I want to help others like me, to give them a chance to be seen and heard. This is about more than just a job for me." Richard nodded, his expression serious. "And I promise to support you in that mission. You're going to be a driving force in this company, Clara." In the weeks that followed, Clara's life began to transform in ways she never imagined. She was promoted to lead the outreach initiatives, and with Richard's backing, she implemented programs that connected the company with local shelters and community organizations. The once quiet whispers of her past were now powerful stories of resilience that inspired others. One sunny afternoon, Clara found herself back in the park where she and Ethan had first met. She had organized a community event to provide services and resources for the homeless population. As she watched families and volunteers interact, laughter echoing around her, she felt a sense of fulfillment that warmed her heart. "Clara!" Ethan's voice rang out, and she turned to see him running toward her, his face alight with joy. He was holding a colorful kite that danced in the gentle breeze. Clara knelt down, beaming at him. "Look what I made. It's beautiful, Ethan," Clara exclaimed, her heart swelling with affection. "You're going to fly high, aren't you?" Ethan nodded vigorously. "Can you help me?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Of course," Clara replied, taking the spool of string from him. Together, they ran across the open field, the kite soaring into the sky. Clara's laughter mingled with Ethan's as they chased after it, the sun shining down on them, illuminating the joy of the moment. As the kite danced above them, Clara took a moment to reflect on her journey. From a homeless woman wandering the streets to a leader in a corporate setting, she had found her purpose. The act of kindness that had sparked her transformation had come full circle, showing her that compassion could indeed change lives. "Clara," Ethan called, pulling her back to the present. "Look how high it is." "Just like you, Ethan," Clara said, smiling at him. "You're going to reach great heights." With the laughter and joy surrounding her, Clara knew that she had found not only a new life for herself, but also a new family in the process. The power of compassion had woven their lives together, creating a tapestry of hope and connection that would continue to grow.